Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. And before you click away from this video, let me explain myself. I, more than anybody else, know that you should not be tracing art for the sole purpose of creating art. However, tracing is a fantastic learning tool, and I want to show you guys how I use it to study different artists. Now, to start off here, the reason that I find tracing to be such an effective tool is when done correctly, it really forces you to focus on the details of a masterwork, and it helps you get sort of the muscle memory to incorporate those details into your art. I've done this with many artists. There's a lot of aspects of my art, including some that you're going to see today, that come from a lot of artists that have inspired me. So to sum it up, I do believe that tracing is a very effective learning tool. However, you should not be posting art that you have traced or copied and claiming it as your own. That's going to be today's overarching theme for this video. Now, the artist that I want to introduce you to is someone who's very familiar to most of you. This is Alfons Muka, and I want to get ahead of the comments here. He is a Czech artist, and I am well aware that his name is pronounced Muka. But as you just heard, I am American and I cannot pronounce the sound very well. So for the purposes of this video and for your listening pleasure, I am going to be pronouncing his name the Americanized Muka. So Alfons Muka is one of my biggest inspirations when it comes to art. I absolutely love the way that he does anatomy. And this is one of my favorite pieces by him. This is, I believe, Autumn from his Seasons series. The Seasons is a series by Muka of, I believe, 3 linograph prints, and each one obviously portraying a different season. This one here is, I believe, Autumn, and she is my favorite specifically for her pose. The way she's leaning back is so unfeminine to a lot of people's perspective, but at the same time, she's like the epitome of femininity. I absolutely love how he was able to portray that with the pose and the flow of the clothing and kind of the tilt of her head. So I want to go ahead and do a tracing study of this piece. As you can see here, we've got my canvas, and then I have my reference off to the side here. The reference is going to stay stationary. This is just the static image of Muka's Autumn, and my canvas obviously is going to be the one that I'm working on. So I'm going to go ahead and lower the opacity of the original piece just to a point where we can't see it, and I'm going to go in with a blue pen. This one's preferential. I just like using a blue pen because it's kind of the way that I start all my sketches. And I want to start with the face because Muka has a very soft look to his faces that's really difficult to replicate. I'm gonna need a smaller brush actually. And I'm just starting out by literally tracing over the line art. I kind of want to see what his lines do. And I'm taking this opportunity to kind of notice the differences between Muka's art and my own art style. For my art style, I definitely would have brought the jawline all the way back, connecting it to the ear, but Muka is able to achieve that really soft, smooth face by just sort of fading the jawline into the neck, and I really want to try and emulate that, so I'm going to do the same thing. He's also got these beautiful curves to the necks of his characters, kind of similar to how I do mine. But as we can see in the original piece, let me bring up the opacity again for a moment. You can definitely see like how well defined the muscles are. And that's actually really anatomically interesting because to be able to hold your head up while you're in this reclined position, these two muscles on the side of your neck are going to be engaged. And Muka, I think, captured that perfectly here. So I just want to kind of sketch in where he did the shadows. And this is the point where you can kind of see I'm starting to deviate from the original line art. This is how I like to do sketch studies. So I'll really try and find the shadow and the kind of structure of a piece, and I want to try and break it down a little. I want to see how things fit together instead of just going through and tracing. Now, there's not a lot of structure in Muka's faces. There's a little bit of shadow under the lip here, and then of course we've got these really soft, really gentle eyes with just the slightest hint of a crease above them. And it actually looks on this side that the curve of the eye is sort of breaking the profile a little bit. It's jutting out from the side of the face. And I think that really helps to give Muka's pieces a lot of like youth in the face. I think having the eyes a little sunken in is going to make a much older character, but having them almost bulging out of the face like that, as horrible of a word as that is, it's going to make the character look a lot more youthful. Just sort of tracing the nose here. Once again, noting the differences between Muka's art and my art. My art, for example, I would definitely do a little bit more of a structured nose than this one. This one is very soft, as we can see, and it comes to quite a point, whereas with my own art, I would usually soften the tip a little bit. But other than that, actually very similar. You're gonna see a lot of similarities to my art because Muka is an artist that I've taken a lot of inspiration from. He's definitely one of my favorite artists, my favorite old master for sure, and I have studied his art a lot. He's got these very structured lips, nothing fading out too much. You can definitely tell where the Cupid's bow is, all the way to the corner of the mouth. And the eyebrows here, I almost forgot about them. Look at how light they are. Something else I've just noticed about the nose is he doesn't really draw, you can definitely see it on my nose. I have a very pronounced dip, sort of right at eye level. And it seems as though the bridge of his nose kind of pushes out a little bit so that there isn't that pronounced dip. All right, I want to move on from the face a little bit. Let's go ahead and trace this hand because it is very interesting. And what I kind of want to do here, I have a method for drawing hands. Generally, I'm going to start by drawing where the fingers are supposed to kind of come out of the hand. So that is, if I were to cut off all my fingers, that would be the part that you see at the top of my hand. And then I fill in with 4 circles to represent where the fingers obviously are going to be. And then I'll draw out the palm. So this part of the hand right here. And then I'll take the rest of the space and kind of draw out where the base of the thumb should go. And then I just kind of grow my fingers out of those circles and areas that I've kind of sketched out, doing this very quickly. But it usually results in a really anatomically correct hand from my experience. And I know hands are extremely difficult to draw. Let me know if you do want a hand drawing tutorial because it's one of my favorite things to draw and I've been doing them for years and years and years. But that is kind of the basics of how I draw a hand. Now, what I want to do is I want to take the technique that I apply to drawing that hand and I want to kind of superimpose it over how Muka draws his hand. So I'm going to do that first part with the fingers cut off. I'm going to kind of sketch that in here because I want to see sort of how my technique would work to draw a hand similar to Muka's and if it would or if I would need to do something different. But we're going to kind of draw the circles in here where all the fingers, I'm already seeing something a little bit different. Oh, this is exciting. Okay, I've learned something. So I don't know if you remember from earlier, but generally when I draw my hands, I draw them like so, with all the circles for the fingers kind of in a row. In sort of tracing over Muka's hand, I've realized that I have drawn the top of the fingers at kind of the wrong angle. They are curving inward a little bit, which I realize I never do. I always have my hands pretty much straight. They're never like curving in. So let's continue on with this. The base of the hand I think is pretty similar, but I think if I were to draw the thumb, I would stop it like right there. And his thumb is a lot longer. I don't know how anatomically correct that is. So I'm gonna kind of split the difference here. I think that's probably where I would be comfortable drawing the thumb, or at least the length of it. And then the fingers on this piece are kind of at some interesting angles. So I'm just sort of drawing each individual segment of the finger to kind of see how they connect. This front finger especially is kind of bent towards the camera. So if you were to look at my hand, you can't really see the length of my first finger because it's bent towards you, instead of to the side where you could see the full length. And that's kind of what's happening with this first finger. I'm gonna go ahead and continue. Yeah, these other ones are pretty similar to how I would draw fingers, just going along each of the joints here. And we have a hand. Yeah, I think I've definitely learned from that to try and like curve the fingers in sometimes, especially when they're holding something. That's a really useful trick. All right, while we're in the territory of the arm and hand, I want to take a look at this shoulder here because I think some of the hair here is kind of cutting off the shape of the shoulder. What I think is going on here is the shoulder actually comes all the way up this way because she is leaning on it. It's going to be like a little further up. And then that would connect to the collarbone in there. Same with the deltoid. But then I find the arm really interesting here because these are actually huge muscles for such a feminine figure. It's so cool how the highlight kind of comes in this way, because this muscle right here would be facing downward, the bicep. It's right about here is where the bicep is on a person. So to have this highlight kind of pointing inwards is really, really cool because it definitely shows the arm turning like that. But just all this space here between the outside of the arm and the inside of the arm, that's like actually a huge amount of space compared to like right here, where it's a lot thinner. And I think that actually works so well because there are a lot of muscles there, and especially when you get older and your muscles and fat and everything kind of fills out, you grow into your body, your upper arms do get a lot bigger. So we've got a youthful face, we've got older arms. It's definitely, I love doing studies. I love seeing how other artists do these kinds of details. I love seeing the studies that they've put into their own art, like anatomical and lighting studies. I love seeing those manifest in other works of art. And I found that the only way I can really, really appreciate it is by going over and tracing it. Oh, I love it. All right, I want to focus on the body here a little bit because this is my favorite part of this piece, because her stomach is pushed so far out. She's leaning so far backwards that it's really creating this opposite line of how you would normally expect like a feminine figure to sit. The rib cage over here is so much further back. In fact, where are the hips? She's got pretty low hips, it looks like. I'd say right about here, maybe? Is this, I can't tell if this is like the belly or the hip bone. You know what? Here's something, hang on. I can see in the back here, we've got a little bit of a bend, and I believe that is kind of where the spine bends. And then coming down here, we got a couple of fat rolls, and then it goes down under her bum here, and the leg kind of comes up this way. So I think anatomically, the hips should be right about here. I don't know how it's getting all the way up here. That's really interesting. And it's what makes this piece so fascinating to me is just the anatomy of it. Let's kind of pencil it out on this side too. Let's see. Got the breast here coming in at an upward angle. Rib cage down this way. It's really hard to see where the body is underneath the clothing, but luckily Muka draws pretty translucent clothing, so we can kind of figure it out. There's definitely a point right here where the clothing is like connecting with the body because of that really sharp angle, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring the hip all the way up there. And then it kind of looks like her leg starts right here. Let's see, where's the knee? The knee is here. So if the thigh comes down this way, oh wait, knee's a little bit lower than that. And then the rest of the leg travels down. That seems a little, does that seem long for the thigh? You know what? I think we've pretty much got it. Here's the other knee. And then we can see a little bit of a gap between her legs right there. This one pulls up somewhere in here, which is really hard to see because of all the wrinkles in the fabric, but we can definitely see where her bottom is because of all the fabric kind of coming in that she's sitting on top of. I think that's it. Okay, let's see. Oh, you know what it is? You know what I'm struggling with? I'm trying to see the hips from a front on angle, but her hips are actually really skewed to the side. So this would probably be closer to the side of the hip, this little area right here. And then we would have the rest of the pelvic bone kind of going this way. All right, that makes a lot more sense. I'm not sure how well you can kind of decipher my scribbles here, but let's see here. Let's start doing these in a different color. We've got the rib cage here, and that comes down to almost this little bend in the back here. And then once again, the legs are going to be connecting here and here. Oh, this is kind of a fun way. Hang on. This is kind of a cool way to map out hips. Wait a minute. Scratch everything. I'm learning. Okay, if that's where her hips connect, then we can kind of draw the hip bones up a little bit. One there, one there. The bum would be kind of doing this in the back, and then the crotch would be coming down this way. Okay, I get it. We've got the spine kind of coming down here. We've got that S-curve representing with that huge pelvic tilt that she's got. And then if we just attach the legs here, they should kind of fit right into the circles that we made on the hips. Let's look at that as it is. I want to take away the full piece, and I kind of want to doodle with this for a second. This is the beauty to me of studies, is you don't have to worry about posting your final piece. No one has to see you kind of noodling around and figuring things out. Well, except for you guys. But I kind of want to see if I just sort of connect these pieces, do I get the same outcome as Muka did in his drawing? I want to see how well my sketch lines kind of line up. All right, that's how I would draw the body if you gave me this pose. Now I kind of want to jump back to Muka here. Pretty similar. The legs are in the wrong place, but that's okay. I didn't do a sketch for the legs. This is way off. His model's a little bit thinner. I love this curve right here. Now, I want to look at something that I've kind of been noticing as I've been doodling on this. This arm, the anatomy kind of appears to be wrong to me from my anatomical knowledge at the very least. We've got the shoulder coming out here, the upper arm, the forearm, and then going into the hand. And then we've got these little valleys where the elbow is supposed to be. That, of course, is pretty correct. You've got that ditch in the elbow. However, this muscle didn't look right to me. This one that's kind of coming through here. If I were to be drawing this, I would have put the muscle at an upward angle, like this. I probably even would have put this elbow ditch at an upward angle. It's kind of hard to describe and even harder to show you, but that's kind of how I would have laid out the muscles on that. I'm looking it up. I'm looking up some anatomy. Okay, so I believe the muscle that I'm looking at is called the brachioradialis. Brachioradialis? That's the best I've got. I'm sorry. Yeah, and as best as I can tell, it goes over the front of the arm from the inner elbow, so the point in my elbow that is closest to me, to the outer wrist. So the point of her elbow outwards toward the wrist, the outer wrist. So imagine this circle, but on the side that we can't see. That would make the muscle coming this way. So I actually think I am right on that one. I think this anatomy is incorrect because the way that Muka has it here, he has the muscle kind of coming in this way. Let me know if I'm wrong. I am not the best at anatomy. I just think I have a pretty good grip on it. So the red is, from what I understand, how the muscle should lay, and the blue is how it appears Muka has it in this portrait. Interesting. Wow, okay. I'm gonna have to do some more research on that because there's a lot that goes on in your forearm with the bones and muscles twisting around, so I'm not entirely sure if that's correct. I definitely want to look into that. All right, I'm going to delete some of these layers here so we can get back to kind of our sketch layer. And what I want to do, we've gotten a lot of the anatomy looked at, and I want to start looking at the folds of the dress because there's two things that I think Muka is really known for, and that's the way he draws fabric and the way he draws hair. His hair specifically, this is what I'm talking about when you can see a lot of his influence in my art. He does these little like hair loopy kind of things where it all seems to kind of melt together no matter where the hair is actually positioned. It kind of looks like it just melts into one sort of conglomerate shape, but it still looks like singular strands. You can see it kind of better in these ones. I apologize that this is really pixelated. I just grabbed an image off Google, but you can see there's no definition between one strand of hair and the other. Instead, there's just these shapes of negative space. Muka does that a lot, and that is something that I have incorporated into my own art, as I will show you guys here. It's one of my favorite things to do. I consider it my signature, but it's definitely one of Muka's signatures as well. But I want to take a look at the fabric right now. So I think the most obvious point of the fabric of this piece is how she's sitting on the dress, and it kind of creates these really tight folds here that all move and meet up in the same area. And what I find really cool about this is you can see the difference in tension between where the fabric is a little bit closer to where it's bunching up. It's very, very loosely draped here, to down at the bottom here where the fabric is being pulled the most. It's very, very tight, very straight lines more towards the bottom. And that's because, of course, the fabric towards the bottom of the dress is further away from the bunch point, I guess, than the fabric at the top of the dress. So I think it is going to appear a lot tighter down here because of that. Now, my favorite part of the dress is actually this highlight right here, where you can kind of make out where her left leg is supposed to be. And it's done purely by highlight. There's not a lot of definition here. There's definitely no line art. It's just this one little highlight down the front of her leg. And it just tells you, hey, there's something in here. This is not just a wall of fabric. There are, in fact, legs underneath. that are informing the shape of the dress. And I absolutely love that. I think it's so cool. And it kind of melts into the separation of the legs here. I just think that's really, really clever to do with highlight alone and no line art whatsoever. Because it's such a thin material, the dress is. Obviously, you can see through it in these couple of places. That I think if you were to put line art in there, it would kind of weigh down the picture and make the material look a lot heavier than it is. So I can definitely see why he did that. And we've also got these lines at the top here where we can tell this dress is like really shapeless almost. It's kind of just a sheet of fabric that's being held up by a band at the top and these two discs. And the rest is just sort of like draped down over her. So there's no cinching, there's no pulling, there's no like intentional draping. It's just laying where it wants to. And this triangle form I find very interesting because you can tell with her leaning back, the fabric is kind of falling away to her sides. Because of that amorphous shape, all the fabric down her sternum and down her belly, we can tell is very, very flat. And then everything kind of coming down to the sides does have that little bit of drapery, and it gets wider as we get more towards the bottom of the dress until we hit the leg. I just think that's a really cool way to pose fabric like this. And you can kind of see too, not all the fabric is really drawn in. I think in places that he wanted it to appear more transparent, he just sort of left out the details of the fabric. That's kind of what we saw here. It's what I'm seeing again over here. There's no shading, there's no line art here aside from the line of the body. So I think that's a good detail to kind of keep in mind when you are drawing a translucent fabric, is to keep the details fairly minimal when it comes to the spaces that you want to see through. Yeah, but I think that's about it for this sketch study. I deleted a lot of my layers, so I know there's not too much to see here aside from Muka's autumn piece. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to show you guys how I use tracing and copying off of another artist's work to improve my own art style, because it can absolutely be used as a really, really effective study in terms of anatomy, lighting, brush strokes if you're doing something traditional. If you want a little bit of a historical context, master studies have been done for as long as art has existed. There's a lot of copies of famous works out there done by apprentices or students of the painter, because it used to be a common practice to forge paintings. I'm not entirely sure if that's the right term, but essentially copy them as close as possible for practice. And even though the term tracing is a little bit tricky nowadays, I still think it's a really, really good study. It's a really, really effective practice. I use it all the time personally, and I want to emphasize this so much. Do not trace over someone else's art and then claim it and try to pass it off as your own. Because it is not. It is someone else's intellectual property that you have stolen. Only ever use this technique for your studies. Never, ever use this to start a full, complete piece that you are planning to take credit for. That is theft. We all know this. Please don't do it. And always make sure if you are studying from an artist that is still alive, please get their permission to post. And if an artist doesn't give you permission, don't post it. This is purely for the purpose of furthering your own art style and furthering your own abilities. No one else needs to see this. This is just your own practice, okay? I want to hammer that in as much as possible. Study good, stealing bad. All right, I think that's enough. If you do want to find some art of mine to study, you can head over to my Instagram. I try to post there about 3 times a week. You can also let me know how those studies are going if you tune into my Twitch live stream. I stream every Tuesday and Friday. We do art and games over there. I'm also back on TikTok. I am trying to post again there semi-regularly, so go check those videos out. And if you want to support this channel and my content in the absolute best way possible, you can find me on Patreon. You can subscribe to support me for as little as $1 a month, and you get exclusive content for as little as $3 a month. And last but not least, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can find your way back here for next week's video. I don't have anything specific planned for next week, but I am planning to do more stuff in the future with my drawing table over there, some more traditional stuff, as well as some digital stuff. But I will see you guys all then, okay? I love you all. Don't steal. Bye.